Even though the Irish picked up 2 linebacker commits in the class of 2024 over the last few days, most Irish fans are not impressed. Is it time to panic about the state of Notre Dame's defensive recruiting? The answer coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to Locked On Irish. It is Tuesday, May 16th, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. As always, you can watch a show on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast platform, but no matter how you decide to tune in, you can help out the show a great deal by hitting that subscribe button. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I am the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and have been podcasting about the football team since 2020. I'm also a producer for college football talent at the Fox Sports headquarters in LA. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about Notre Dame's 2 most recent commitments in the class of 2024. I talked about the addition of graduate transfer safety Antonio Carter in yesterday's episode, so if you haven't listened to that one yet and want to check it out, it's already up on the feed. But the Irish picked up a pair of linebacker commits over the last few days, first from Teddy Rezac on Friday, and then Bodhi Kahoun, 3-star linebacker out of Virginia, who announced his commitment on Monday. Neither recruit is ranked in the top 400 players nationally, according to the 247 Sports Composite. So fans have had mixed reactions about these commitments, to say the least. Also, defensive lineman Alex Ehrensberger announced his retirement from football over the weekend. So I'll go over his decision and what impact it will have on the team at the end. But let's start with the linebackers and what led to their commitments to Notre Dame. I'll go over their background first and why they picked Notre Dame, and then I'll get into sort of my opinions about the big picture state of Notre Dame's defensive recruiting and all of that in segment 2. But let's start with Teddy Rezac. He was the first to commit, and he's definitely the most polarizing of the 2. And the reason for that is because of his ranking on the recruiting sites and his offer sheet. He's listed as the 846th player nationally in the class of 2024 and the 8th rated player in Nebraska, which is not necessarily a hotbed for high school football talent. And I'm surprised that they even rank high school players after like 600. I mean, at that point, which person or persons is going through all those different players and differentiating between the 2? And you consider all the different factors in play, their position, the competition they're playing in high school. There's so much that goes into it. But somehow they managed to do it. And this is where Rezac landed, 846. I actually think he jumped up quite a bit because I think the first time I saw his name floating around, he was rated at 950. Now he's moved up a little bit probably because of the Notre Dame offer and then Nebraska offered him. But either way, he's a really low 3-star recruit that is certainly under the radar at this point in time. Notre Dame was just the second Power 5 school to offer him behind Boston College. His hometown team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, offered him just a few days after Notre Dame did. Some of the other schools to offer Rezac include Air Force, Army, Coastal Carolina, Colorado State, Dartmouth, Fordham, Navy, etc. Not necessarily traditional football powerhouses, but he is still getting some attention from some colleges. And there's a lot of people who are going to listen to this part and assume that this kid sucks and Notre Dame should never have been involved, especially not this early in the process. And I think that's a bit of an overreaction at this point in time. So let's be fair to the Notre Dame staff and let's be fair to Rezac and go over his profile a little bit here. He's listed as 6'4", 195 pounds, and has a 33-inch wingspan, so he's got great size and length for a linebacker, and that is something that the Notre Dame staff is clearly prioritizing now, for the record, in terms of like black and white. Do you fit into these categories type of thing when they're looking at high school recruits? If they do, great, they can continue to recruit them. If not, they're probably not going to prioritize them right now. And it's something that has really been the case ever since Marcus Freeman has come on board as the defensive coordinator way back in 2021. Defensive coordinator Al Golden clearly sees something in him because he's the one leading the charge with this recruitment. Golden visited Westside High School in early May, which is where Rezac attends, along with multiple other coaches on the Notre Dame staff, and he offered a Rezac scholarship. The very next day, Rezac flew out to Notre Dame for an unofficial visit and gave a verbal commitment not long after. And as I understand it, Rezac went through a workout for Al Golden and the other coaches in attendance. By all accounts, Rezac flashed impressive athleticism throughout, and that's a big reason why Notre Dame likes him so much as a project. His workout backed up what they saw on tape, and what they saw on tape was a very versatile athlete that is quite literally like a Mr. Everything for his high school football team. He started at outside linebacker, cornerback, safety, and wide receiver so far during his high school career. And Notre Dame loves his length, as I was just saying, his attitude, his athleticism, and his love for the game of football. So worst case, you're probably looking at like a regular contributor on special teams. That's probably how the Notre Dame staff is looking at it. Last season, he registered 62 tackles, 4 TFLs, and had 2 interceptions. He also had over 400 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns in offense, but that's not really going to matter once he gets to Notre Dame because he is projected to play rover once he arrives on campus. And considering how many Ivy League schools are looking at him, it's fair to assume that he has a strong academic background, and that's something that he prioritizes at the next level and is the reason why he's considered such a good fit for Notre Dame. So that's a background on Rezac. Now let's move over to Bodie Kahoun, who's ranked higher than Rezac. He's the number 428 player nationally and the number 26 linebacker in the class of 2024. Even though Rezac is expected to play linebacker at Notre Dame, if you look at all the recruiting sites, they list him as an athlete, and I think that just has to do with all the positions he plays at high school. But don't get it wrong, he is definitely the linebacker and actually the first linebacker to commit in the class of 2024. But back to Cajon here. He's 6'3", 220 pounds, and plays high school ball at Patrick Henry in Roanoke, Virginia. But he actually grew up in Zionsville, Indiana, which is just a couple hours south of Notre Dame. It's a little bit like north of Indianapolis. It's actually where Logan Imes, the basketball prospect who committed to Notre Dame in the class of 2023, that's where he went to school. And Cajon lived there until he was about 10, and then his family moved. So even though he goes to high school in Virginia, his family is still pretty familiar with the Notre Dame and the brand and all of that. This commitment was not nearly as expedited as Rezac's was. So Cajon first visited Notre Dame in March and then came back for the blue and gold game in April. And he actually had several official visits lined up this summer to schools like North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia Tech. But he realized those weren't necessary because he had already made up his mind and he wanted to play for Notre Dame. He had actually been committed to Ohio State in lacrosse way back in September of 2022. So he's an elite two-sport athlete. And I think what happened was once he realized that playing college football was going to be an option for him once he was playing through his junior season, all of a sudden he started to reconsider his recruitment and what he wanted to do at the college level. I'm not sure if he's going to play lacrosse at Notre Dame, but I think it's a possibility for sure considering how good Notre Dame lacrosse is. And I think this is a big reason why the coaching staff wanted him. He's a great athlete. Anyone who could commit to Ohio State in lacrosse and Notre Dame in football, that's a special breed of athlete, and there's not that many of those out there. So I understand why the staff was looking at him, and I think his offer sheet is a little bit better than Rezac's. It makes you feel a little bit more comfortable about his recruitment. Just looking at the schools, including Tennessee, Florida State, North Carolina, almost a dozen others. So this is a little bit different than Rezac, but still outside of the top 400, you know, it's not what you love to see, I guess you could say, if you're looking at the recruiting sites. But again, that's not everything, and the Notre Dame coaching staff doesn't look at those, and they're not going to make a judgment based on what someone at 24/7 or Rivals or ESPN thinks about their prospect. They make their own evaluations and their judgments, and that's how it should be. As for his player profile, he's got great closing speed and is very physical. He can change direction quickly and relies a lot on the fact that he's one of the best athletes on the field every time. That makes sense, given his lacrosse background. He can change direction quickly. But he doesn't have to cover as much for his high school team, so obviously that's going to be a big question mark. But much like Rezac, he's a great athlete. He's very versatile. And those are the qualities that Al Golden clearly likes. He likes guys who can do different things on the field. They're long, athletic, versatile. They can move around. I think Cajon projects to be either a Mike or a Will linebacker, so he'll probably be playing more inside than Rezac. But still, two linebackers, different skill sets, but both very athletic. And they're definitely going to be project players at Notre Dame because I think based on what they're at right now in terms of their development and their physical skill set, I don't think either of these guys are going to be potential, freshman standouts or anything like that. But now that we have a little bit more context about Rezac and Cajon, what do their commitments tell us about the state of recruiting for Notre Dame's defense? That's coming up next. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices but don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Each bar only has 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now, you don't need to wait to get a box. You can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. So, head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a 4-bar box of Built Bars. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with some of our hit flavors. No matter how you get your supply of Built Bars, you're in for a delicious treat, and you can thank me later. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. Now that I've gone over sort of the player profiles for Teddy Rezac and Bodie Kahoun, let's take a step back here and look at the big picture in the state of Notre Dame recruiting on defense right now, because Teddy Rezac was the 15th commitment in the class overall and the first linebacker taken, and Bodie Kahoun was the 16th commitment and the second linebacker. And as of this recording, Notre Dame has the third-ranked class in the 247 Sports Composite. So it's not like the entire recruiting operation is in shambles right now. The state of recruiting overall is still very positive for Notre Dame. They have a really good class in the works, but That being said, Notre Dame's top-rated defensive commit right now is Bryce Young, who is ranked number 331st in the country right now. Out of the 8 total commits on the defensive side of the ball in the class of 2024, not one is ranked in the top 300 at this point in time. And I think it's fair to be concerned about that right now, because if you look at it, Notre Dame is still very much in the running for some top guys. Like, they're in the mix for 2 5-star defensive linemen in Justin Scott and Elijah Rushing, plus a 4-star linebacker in Kingston Viliamo Asa. He plays for St. John Bosco out here in Los Angeles, one of the top high school programs in the entire country. Notre Dame has made him a top priority for a really long time. So if they get commitments from all 3 of those guys, we're looking at this defensive class completely differently. And there is a chance that they could land all of them. I would say, it's unlikely that they land all 3, but even if they get 2 out of 3, that's a big win for Notre Dame, and we'd be talking about this class in a much, much better light. But the fact is, those guys have not committed, and it's unclear where they're leaning right now, and it might be Notre Dame, and it might not. So I think it's fair for a lot of people to ask, why would Notre Dame take these commitments now, so early in the process? Because they're still 7 months away from early signing day, and it's realistic to ask, couldn't Notre Dame spend all of their time right now going after the top guys, and if they don't get them, then they could fall back or settle on these lower recruited prospects? Maybe. Okay, that was my first thought when I saw that Notre Dame offered Rezac, because I was like, wait a second, this is way too early for a guy of this caliber, at least this rank. But I wasn't surprised once Rezac committed. Like, once he got the offer, of course he was going to accept it, especially if Notre Dame is a dream school like he was saying. So that part made sense to me. And I think from the Notre Dame perspective, they have to understand that as soon as they extend that offer, there's probably a good chance that he's going to commit, and he's going to commit soon. Even Rezac's high school coach said he was surprised at how quickly the process went down, because he assumed that most coaches would want to see how he does in his senior year, but Notre Dame clearly liked what they saw, and they were prepared to offer him a scholarship and accept him into this class. Now, is it possible that Notre Dame could have waited? Maybe, but they're probably looking at it like, this guy checks all of the boxes we want. He's got the right, physical built. He's got the attitude. He's going to be great for our locker room, and we think that he could develop into a really good player. If he checks all the boxes, then it's probably worth it to take a flyer on him at this point in time and not worry about waiting and then seeing other schools jump in late in the game and potentially swipe him from Notre Dame, especially with Kahoun. Like, I think that with him, he's still ranked relatively low, but his offer list was expanding quickly, and he was getting serious interest from other Power 5 programs. I mentioned the schools that he had official visits scheduled to this summer. So I don't think Notre Dame would have been able to wait on his commitment. They had to take that now, and that part made sense to me. So Notre Dame is certainly not done recruiting linebackers in this class either. So I think we all need to take a step back and be like, all right, this is the guys that Notre Dame is rolling with? Not necessarily. Those are 2, and I think Notre Dame is looking to add at least 3 linebackers in this class. They added 3 last year, and then in the year before they added 4, but then 2 of those guys, Junior Tuialamaka and Josh Burnham, they ended up moving to the defensive line. So they've had plenty of guys come in, plenty of really good players so far over the last 2 cycles, but I think it's worth it to get 3 more, potentially even 4, depending on what happens with Kingston. 2 other guys to keep an eye out for is Chris Cole. He's a 3-star out of Salem, Virginia. His stock is rising pretty quickly. He was in town for the Blue and Gold game and has an official visit scheduled in June. And then there's Brian Huff, who's a 4-star linebacker out of Arkansas. Out of Huff, Cole, Rezac, and Cajon. He's actually the highest rated of all of them, but a lot of people think that he's going to just stay home and go to Arkansas, which is where he's from. But he's been on the record saying he has very serious interest in Notre Dame, so we're just going to have to see what happens there. But I don't think Notre Dame is done recruiting linebackers in this class whatsoever. So if we really wanted to take a big picture look at this, I think it begs the question, is Notre Dame changing its approach and how they're recruiting players on the defensive side of the ball? Are they willing to recruit lower rated guys basically as projects and sort of develop them over time into productive players at Notre Dame? I would say that would really go against everything that we've seen from Notre Dame ever since Marcus Freeman arrived to the coaching staff. Over the last 2 seasons, Notre Dame has signed 7 top 300 prospects on defense in each of the past 2 cycles. So it seems odd that they just willingly go away from that when they've had so much success on that side of the ball. I do think it represents a slight change than before, and that they're going after guys who they know will stay locked in and then go after the big game later, rather than go for the big game first and then try to piece it together at the end if they miss out. I can't say for certain what the strategy is, so I'm sort of just speculating here, and I'm trying to read everything that's going on and make my own interpretations of what is happening. But I think it's pretty clear here that strategy, if they just end up with a lot of guys that they settled on, that's probably not going to work best for this class, because the numbers are what they are. 3-star prospects turn out to be NFL draftees way less than 4 and 5 stars. That's a fact. We've been over this many times in this podcast. It's like the whole thesis of the stars matter mantra that Ari Wasserman from The Athletic made famous, and it's true. Now, that's not to say that some 3-stars can't turn into NFL prospects, but odds are that they won't. So, on one hand, these guys that Notre Dame has taken that are really low-rated recruits, they might work out. They might turn into really good players. Drew White did that. Ade Ungadeji did that. But history tells us that they probably won't. That doesn't mean they can't. I'm just saying it's unlikely that it will work out, especially for several of these guys. It might work out for one, but odds are it's probably not going to happen to like 4 of them. So at this point, I could, yell and scream and criticize Al Golden for his strategy, or I could wait and see how this plays out. If Notre Dame lands all 3 of the guys I mentioned earlier, like Scott Rushing and Viliamu Asa, it isn't nearly as problematic. And Notre Dame has recruited really well defensively since Marcus Freeman has been around, and there is no way in my mind that Al Golden is offering these guys without Freeman's approval. So if you want to criticize Al Golden here, I think you also got to criticize Marcus Freeman. I'm not ready to do that just yet because I think there's a lot of things that need to happen before we can say what is going on with the Notre Dame defensive recruiting class here. So I'm going to wait and see. I trust Marcus Freeman. I trust Al Golden. I trust their evaluations here. And Notre Dame has had a pretty good track record of being early on guys before. They were one of the first to identify Brandon Hillman before a bunch of other Power 5 programs jumped in last year in the last recruiting class. Now, even though he ended up getting a release from his national letter of intent, Notre Dame was on him early. They were able to secure that commitment. And then for a bunch of different reasons, he ended up not going to Notre Dame. But I think that was a great testament to Notre Dame's evaluation process and how they're early on guys before everyone else is. Even the same could be said about Keon Keeley to an extent. Now, he was already a top recruit in a way, but then Notre Dame got on him before, and then he catapulted all the way up into like the top 5 on every recruiting site. Again, Notre Dame wasn't able to secure his commitment, but still it represents that Notre Dame has a pretty good evaluation process. So I think you've just got to trust Freeman here, and you have to trust Al Golden that they found some diamonds in the rough. And if it doesn't pan out, then they'll have to answer for their decisions here. But I'm not ready to criticize them yet. I don't think it's time to panic. I think we've just got to wait and see how this class plays out. And then over time, we might have to revisit this down the road and see what the hell was going on here, why Notre Dame was willing to get these guys so early in the process. Or maybe Rezac and Kahoun are just studs, and we can all look back at this and laugh. All right, coming up in segment 3, how Alex Ehrensberger's decision to step away from football impacts the Notre Dame depth chart. Last Friday, senior defensive lineman Alex Ehrensberger announced that he was retiring from football so he could pursue medical school back home in Germany. Ehrensberger will graduate after this semester and then return home to start medical school in August. And it sounds like a really cool opportunity for him. So even though his football career at Notre Dame didn't pan out, I think this is a great story about life after football for Notre Dame football players. And I think it's a really cool situation for him. So if you remember, Aaronsberger was part of the 2020 class as a late addition that was always considered to be a project because he was from Germany. No, I don't think a lot of people had a great idea of how he was going to translate his skill set to the Power 5 level, but he had insane size. Like he's 6'7", 270 pounds. He's got great length, so it made sense to take a chance on him, even though he was a low 3-star recruit. And even though he was never like a consistent part of the defensive line rotation, he was a solid contributor on special teams. He was the personal protector on the punt unit throughout last year and actually got 2 tackles against Boston College in that blowout at the end of last season. He also had a sack against Georgia Tech in 2021. So he went through spring practice this spring and had to make a decision about his future sooner than most because the program he wants to join can only start in August. So it's not like he could play out the football season and then start medical school at the start of next winter. That wasn't the case, as reported by Pete Sampson from The Athletic. So he basically had to decide, is it worth sticking around another year, probably not playing that much at Notre Dame, or should I just go ahead and get a start on the rest of my life, take my Notre Dame degree, go to medical school and all that. And he made that decision, and I think it's really cool. Unfortunately, he never really found a home positionally at Notre Dame. Again, he had unbelievable size, so I think they tried him off the edge at first as the strong side defensive end, but then they moved him inside, and unfortunately, it just never really panned out for him. He never really found his place on the depth chart. He would get some snaps here and there, but never was really consistently a part of the rotation. So what does the defensive line rotation look like now? Notre Dame still has 17 defensive linemen on scholarship, and considering Aaronsberger didn't play much last season and made the decision now, my hunch is that he understood that he wasn't going to get a bunch of playing time this year either. The thing is, Notre Dame is down to 81 scholarships now, so there is a possibility that the Irish could add another player in the transfer portal. I would consider that unlikely at this point in time. Now, if there's a person out there who's been a really productive player so far at the college level, I'm not even saying specific to the defensive line either. This could be at literally any position. If that is the case and that player is considering Notre Dame and wants to come there, then Notre Dame should take them. I think at this point in time, Notre Dame should take any good player in the portal if they want to come to Notre Dame and they can get into the university, because you just need to stockpile as much talent as possible for every single position group on the roster. And at this point, in the nature of college football, I don't think you could be really concerned about if that's going to hurt someone's feelings or they feel disrespect in the room, because guess what? They might leave anyway. You know what I mean? So I think you got to take as many people as possible. Right now, I have not heard anything to suggest that Notre Dame is on the short list for any big-time candidates left in the transfer portal. The transfer portal window has closed for undergraduates, although I guess it really doesn't matter that much to Notre Dame because they can really only take grad transfers anyway. But that's sort of the thing. That's sort of the state, the transfer portal right now with Notre Dame. And also, I think this presents an opportunity for Tyson Ford and Donovan Heinisch, two underclassmen defensive linemen, to get on the field a little bit more this year. Again, they're probably not going to get that many snaps. Maybe Tyson Ford will, especially after the spring game he had. If he's able to build on that momentum and carry that into fall camp, into the fall, he might be on the field a lot more than expected. Donovan Heinisch, we all know his older brother Kurt and how great he was at Notre Dame and how he impressed so many people and surprised a lot of people by getting on the field as early as he did. We'll see if Donovan can do the same. Now he certainly has an easier path to get on the field without Aaronsberger there in front of him. Now, if you look at the rotation, I still think we're looking at Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, and Jordan Botelho as the first unit out there. And then the first backups at each position. At strong side end, I'm seeing Nana Osafo-Mensah. Although he could earn the starting job over Javonte Jean-Baptiste, I think they're going to split time pretty much throughout the year. And then nose tackle, Jason Anye, one of the surprise breakout players during spring practice. He's a redshirt sophomore, only played 8 snaps in 2022. But I think his rise might have also played a part in why Aaronsberger decided to leave, because Anye is right there now in the middle of that defense, and he's probably going to see the field quite a bit in the fall, especially if he's able to build on that impressive spring that he had. And then you've got Gabriel Rubio, the redshirt sophomore. He played 159 snaps in 2022. I think he's going to build on that this year. He's going to be the backup D tackle. And then Junior Tui Alamaka, true sophomore, converted linebacker to Viper. He played 63 snaps last year. He's been pretty impressive so far based on everything we've heard about what he's done since he moved full-time to Viper. He's going to be the first off the bench there. We'll probably see him in some third down packages as well. So Notre Dame's got plenty of guys to work with. They've also got Aiden Kayanana, another defensive tackle, right there in the mix. So I think Notre Dame's going to be okay. I think they're going to be able to withstand this. And even though it's a bummer that Ehrensberger was never able to develop into his size at Notre Dame, it was always going to be a long shot to begin with. And now he gets to take his degree and embark on a really cool journey in the medical field in his homeland, which I'm sure he's really excited about. That's a wrap for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. Remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or whatever you get your podcasts, and follow the show on social media so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing over here on the pod. The Twitter account is @LockedOnIrish. The Instagram is @LockedOnIrishPod. And my personal Twitter account is @Tyler Wojciak. That's @Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you guys tomorrow.